just missed them. All right, welcome back, everybody. I hope you had a good breakout. And I want to start just this session, this introductory session about what's the Open States Project, what do we do, who's behind it. I want to start that with why this matters, why open data matters. And for me, it starts with a fundamental belief that public policy frames the way we live our lives together. It's not the only thing that does, but it puts a pretty powerful bracket on what kind of lives are possible for us, what's easy, what's hard, what's supported, what's opposed. And for me, that's where it starts. And I think, it's not hard to look around for examples, of the intersection between public policy and the powerful and real impacts it has on people's lives in some of the most intimate and personal ways. The Supreme Court decision that overturned the Roe v. Wade precedent opened up this patchwork of legislative history across the country, legislative history that without open data, we can't understand easily at all. People struggling to understand, what does this mean? What's legal? What risks are people going through? Laws that were passed 100 years ago, 150 years ago, suddenly having force, laws that are being pushed in, the moments and days and weeks right after the Supreme Court decision. All of that activity, both extremely recent, extremely old, all with powerful impacts on people's lives. And so open data to me matters because without it, we can't understand what's happening, what's driving these impacts on people's lives. Open States is the oldest and best repository for that open data for U.S. state legislatures. We've got a 13-year legacy as the best source for open data on state legislation. That legacy is really important to me. It's an honor, frankly, to be able to step into this space and be part of adopting Open States. Many years after it was started, many years after other folks who are here on this call kept the project going. So it's really an honor and a privilege to be able to continue to shepherd that legacy forward. And you can see some of the logos here just to illustrate the changes and shifts over time that has kept this project going. Because we don't see help coming on the horizon, right? There's the possibility for unified federal legislation to make data universally open in a structured and available way. I am not predicting that happens anytime soon. So this legacy continues to be super important to guard and to continue forward. And what's more, the heroes of democracy depend on us. We have hundreds of API integrations with the Open States API. We have thousands of policy researchers, millions of visitors, just regular folks who are trying to learn about a bill, who are trying to find out who their representatives are. They come to openstates.org for that. And that's another part of the legacy that's really important, really a privilege to continue to serve from. So everybody from journalists, researchers, academics, people who are just running digital democracy experiments, people like Civic Eagle, years ago, who are startups looking to use technology to make an impact in the space. Civic Eagle, we were able to come in and stand on the shoulders of other folks who have built this project. And that's why for us, we decided, hey, it meant that much to us. We're going to make sure it continues to make that much, mean that much to other people. And it matters because there are still big frontiers for democracy and transparency with regard to data. Whether we're talking about legal data, or we're talking about municipal data, jurisdictions outside of the United States, there are a lot of places we can look around and see processes that are democratic, right? A part of the democratic institutions, but the data is not democratized. And that delta between democracy but not democratic data is a real problem. It's a real barrier that we need. There's still big frontiers in terms of knocking that barrier down and making sure that the data is as democratized as it should be to match these institutions. And that's where you come in. Folks who are here on this call, really glad to have you here because that work is not easy. As we've seen with this project, 13 years on, it's still a struggle just every year, making sure we are staying on top of government websites and feeds and all of the wrinkles that are involved. And there are so many opportunities for you to get involved. And we're going to get to those kind of at the close of this session to introduce you to some of those. But first, I want to hand the talk over to my colleague, Riley, and let them take it from here.
Yes. Hello. So coming back to where we started, originally we started off with as a Sunlight Labs project. Originally the idea started at PyCon to actually work on the scrapers. They kind of expected like maybe 10 volunteers and ended up getting 40 plus, and managed to get through a lot of the original scrapers done. Originally, the project was written in Python, Ruby, and C#, so anybody could actually submit to it. It was a kind of a copy an example and change what you need, kind of a copy paste found going for it. Crap. But eventually, like during that time, Python 1 and all the scrapers moved into that. Then in 2011, there was the initial team and funding that got started. There actually was an office with some engineers and data quality experts. There was some funding with some backing from the Minnesota Historical Society and the Rita Allen Foundation. In 2013, it was the original version of openstates.org, kicked off with a state grading list for data coverage, and was very beginning phases of that, opening up that kind of data to the public. So it was a little bit easier for people to have access to that on the user side. Unfortunately, in 2016, Sunlight Labs closed, but thanks to James, the founder, and Tim Showers of GovHawk, it still maintained existence. That was actually, from 2016 to 2021, it was mainly James's project, but we still grew a lot. It was the first Open State Summit to actually happen. We kicked off the GraphQL API and API v2, which are still around to this day. And through some extra additional research funding, more recently in 2019, API v3 kicked off, which is our current biggest source. And they got to focus a little bit more on maintainability and doing things the right way for the future. And eventually, we actually Civic Eagle stepped up and adopted the project at the start of 2021. And Civic Eagle, we, through NView, provide tracking legislation and policy intelligence for professional policy advocates, with a special focus on collaboration and saving people time to act on that legislation. We're different from most of our competitors because we started with this data, and so we made a commitment to sustain it, but also shout out to Tim at GovHawk and all of their contributions. But really, with the core idea with this is that we've got a really important social impact vision for democracy. Civic Eagle believes in the right of residents to access and understand this data, but also meeting high growth, where we are a VC-funded startup and we're trying to make a global impact on policy intelligence. So both of these are really important to us, and so an open data core is the only way for us to go. Again, core contributors, you're going to be seeing people online and throughout the day. We've got myself, James is the founder emeritus, Sean does infrastructure. We've got a couple of data engineers, some subject experts, Jesse, who started us off, and other key partners, Tim at GovHawk and Chris at ResistBot. I think I'll hand it back to Jesse.
Awesome. Thank you, Riley. And if it wasn't clear, Riley is really our point person day to day on Open States data. So Riley, thank you for all that work. So much work goes in, and especially this time of year, right? Like legislative sessions have just started in a lot of states here in the US over the last couple of weeks. Some data before that, free files. So it's really been longer than the last couple of weeks, but this couple of weeks is hot and heavy. So Riley, if I had a hat, I would take it off to you for all that focus and attention that makes it happen. So yeah, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. At Civic Eagle, we're proud to do a big chunk of that work. Really happy for our partners who help us kind of share the burden of making this open data available for everybody. But really importantly, that's an opportunity for you, right? Like we make this data available, but there's so much more data we could get. There's so much work to do a good job of preparing and ingesting that data. There are lots of opportunities for you to fit into the Open States project. The first one that I want to share is just use our tools to make an impact on democracy. Democracy means so many people have to contribute to move stuff forward, to just make folks aware of what problems are out there, let alone move policy reforms to address them. We've got some very cool API users. You're going to hear more later in the afternoon. One of the afternoon sessions is user highlights. You're going to hear from at least 3 of our folks who have used the API and our data to make impacts on democracy in cool ways. But there are a lot more, and you can join those ranks. So the first way you can fit into this project is use our tools and our data and impact democracy in the way that matters to you and matters to your community. There's no one way to do that, but we've got many ways to get at the data so you can start your work. We have an API. If you can program, it's pretty easy to get started and start querying the data. We also have bulk data offerings. If you're not really, a programmer, bulk data can be a way, even if you're just comfortable with spreadsheets or looking through databases. Our bulk data offerings are a way to kind of do analysis of a large amount of data without having to learn how to write a software interface to pull from that API. And even if you don't know how to work with spreadsheets, you don't know how to work with databases, you just want to learn about bills. You just want to track what's happening in your state legislature. We've got tools on openstates.org for you to do that. And so we offer free bill tracking, free bill search and research. You can find your representatives on openstates.org. So that's the first category, is just use our tools to make a positive impact on democracy. This next 2 days, we've got hackathon sessions on Friday and Saturday, and roughly 2 tracks. One of those is kind of an analysis track. One of those is kind of a beginner's web scraping track. And you'll have opportunities to learn about how to interact with our tools through either one of those. Okay, second place you can fit in, contribute to maintaining and adding data. The project has grown over time. It's shrunk at various times. It's grown again through the history of the project, just based on resources. The amount of data we've been able to provide as public open data has shifted. And that means that if you add your time, your attention to the project, we can grow it faster. We can add types of data that maybe today we're not even thinking about. And so that's a huge impact that you can make. The first way you can do that is by learning how to contribute to and add to our suite of web scrapers. Web scraper is a piece of software that knows how to go to some website or some API, somebody else's computer, basically on the internet, and make requests to that computer, load web pages, knows how to look at the content of those web pages and pull little bits of data out of those web pages and find the links to the next web page and the next web page, right? So that's what a web scraper does, is it kind of crawls the internet. You can think about search engines and the software that they run that to crawl the internet and get data. That's the same concept. And so learning how to write or fix a web scraper is a huge way to contribute to this project. We've got web scrapers for state legislatures and for Congress, but we can go further. Like I said, there are data frontiers, whether that's thinking about, policy that's moving at the local or county level. We haven't explored very much, but there might be some places, especially as technology rolls on, there might be some places in cities where you can scrape your local data on policy. And even if you don't want to be on the frontier, even if you just want to fix bugs and report bugs, like the battle is never ending to keep these web scrapers working effectively to get data from these dozens and dozens of different government websites, which, as you can imagine, are very idiosyncratic. They've got their problems. They change without any warning. Like nobody owes us anything, right? So things change and we've just got to react to it. So that's a huge way to contribute, is helping work on the web scrapers. And if you want to work on data, but you don't know code or don't have time to learn code, there's other kinds of data we work with too. So people data is a big one. We've got a people repository where the task is a lot more like kind of manual research and data entry a lot of the time. We do have scrapers that pull some of that data in, but that's not 100% reliable. There's some data like social media handles that we just can't get easily from state legislature websites. So spending some time to grab social media handles or other data for legislators and adding them to that people data is something that still requires a little bit of technical skill, but not programming, right? So it's a lot more accessible. And submitting issues like looking at the data and letting us know where we've got somebody wrong requires almost no technical skill. So that's a really accessible way to get involved. And finally, like I said, think about your community, the issues that you care about, the policy stuff you care about, and ask yourself, like, do I have good data about this? Is the data about how this is moving forward or not being made available? And if not, like, let's have a conversation and see if there's a sort of a new data frontier that we can tackle through this project. Awesome. And finally, I want to encourage you to spread the word about open data, and spread the skills, right? Help other people learn these kind of skills. Luckily, there's a bigger civic tech ecosystem out there. There's been some boom and bust around civic tech, but some of it has kind of institutionalized. I want to do a special shout out to Chicago Hack Night, Shy Hack Night, which happens regularly here where I am today in Chicago. Normally I'm in Minneapolis, so I'm a little jealous that the Chicago folks have such an organized hack night, but they've got a really cool little community that meets every single week. Folks who are usually on a volunteer basis, just hacking on civic data, not necessarily our data, all kinds of data that impact public policy and understanding the community around them. Even things like our buses arriving as scheduled, right? Like really useful things to know if you live in a community. You notice things aren't working the way you think they are, but can you prove it, right? Can you prove it in a way that might change policy to fix it? So yeah, spread the word. Let's give thanks to the people who kept the torch lit. Thanks to James Turk, thanks to Tim Showers, a bunch of other people who kept this project alive over the years that, over a decade that it's been alive. And this is the invitation, like you get to be one of those new people. So whether it's our project, whether it's Open States that you want to we can pass the torch to you, or find something else. I mentioned Shy Hack Night, organization called Public Resource, the Free Law Project, which has a very cool project called Recap to try to make court and judicial rulings accessible and free for people. Code for America has a huge network of local brigades. So all of those are opportunities for you to like connect, learn the skills, and spread the word about open civic data and civic tech. Awesome. And just to close off our introduction, we're going to have another section talking, introducing kind of all the rest of the hackathon, also how to interface with us as a project. We might be a little ahead of schedule, so maybe we'll have time to take a little bit of questions. We'll see. So get your questions ready, and let me hand it back to Riley.
Perfect. So one way to get involved is the hackathon for tomorrow and Saturday. Like Jesse said, we have two main tracks. It's going to be the let's see, data beginner track, which is going to be mostly learning scraping. We've got a lot of scrapers that need to get written, and it's a good way to get hands-on with that. We've also got the data analytics track if you want to play around with the data. That's a good offering. We also do have a DIY track. If neither of those sound very particularly interesting, if you have a really strong idea that you want to work on and see if other people are interested, we do have a Miro board that is public. The link is available on that summit agenda page. So if you have anything that you want to particularly work on, you can feel free to share that there and see if you can get other people interested. We'll primarily be communicating over the hackathon on Matrix, but that the Miro board is also an option for people. Some key opportunities to contribute to the project as a whole. Like I said, we need a lot of committee scrapers written, but there's other ways that you can get involved with scrapers. It doesn't need to be a whole scraper. There's a lot of bug fixes that need to get done, and some of them are very simple. So it's always good for first-time committers for open source projects. And we definitely need a lot of help with people updates, with all of the legislatures, most of them starting new sessions this month. That has been a huge source of need. So some things that you might need to, tools you might need to learn in order to help out. GitHub is definitely the first one. That is where we keep all of our repositories. Everything of our code is all public. But that is where we have the scraper repo, people repo, and some other documentation and things as well. If you are interested in contributing to that, they're all available. But it is definitely tricky for beginners. Learning some Python would also be probably good, since that is entirely what all of our code is based on. And some web scraping if you are interested in going down that rabbit hole. But ways to communicate with us, like I said, we'll be communicating mostly on Matrix for the summit, but we also do have a Slack channel that is open if you'd like to join that. We do track issues and discussions on GitHub as well. So for people who are interested in helping out with the scrapers, we've got that repository that has a bunch of tickets ready to go with new either good first issue or first scraper labels. So you can tag yourself on that if you want to take those. There is also a discussion and Q&A area on that. So if you have questions, like general questions, that is one place to reach out as well. We also do have a Twitter and a email. So if you would like to go those routes and reach out to us directly, you can do that. I think that's it. Any questions? I think we got time.
I'll ask a quick question. In terms of scraping, is it language agnostic, or what's the language? What's the framework? Is that coming later? Did I miss that comment?
Yeah, so the language is Python, and we have a specific library that we are trying to use called Spatula that James actually wrote. And if you are interested in that track, we will be doing a tutorial on that tomorrow morning.
Right.
So get a little bit hands-on
during the hacking stuff. So it seems like a lot of this conference is, people are going to talk a little bit, but there's like 2 or 3 days of hacking. And I think that's really kind of where you're looking for the majority of the participation, or hopefully trying to get some participation. How's that working?
Hopefully get some participation on that, but yeah, definitely doesn't have to be. That's my primary focus. I'll be helping lead those sessions, but
I gotcha. All right.
Yeah, it's open to anyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we're also doing our last session today is a developer Q&A, so that'll be a little bit more of an interactive session as well.
Right. Sorry, I'm doing the usual developer multitask here. So if I stick my head over here and ask a dumb question, and my apologies. So, thank you, though.
Awesome. Taking another question from the chat about the PR code review process. Riley, do you want to take that one too?
Yeah, so it's going to be set up there. We'll go through this whole thing a little bit more in depth later, but there is documentation on docs.openstates.org on how to set up. Initially, we have a repository on GitHub. We prefer it if you fork it and then work on branches there, and then create those pull requests and tag myself as a reviewer. And yeah, we can actually get that merged in when it looks good and works. We'll also have other people helping out with the reviews, so it won't just be me as a bottleneck.
Another question from Spencer. Where is the Miro board? Where will people post like this?
Yeah, great question. If you go through, thank you folks who post in the chat. So the tool is called Miro, M-I-R-O, and it's kind of a virtual whiteboard. So that's a great space if you want to put up project ideas. We'll put up information about tasks there. It's kind of a good place to like just post post-it notes that you might want to connect with other people about. And thank you, Chris just posted the link and password for that in the chat, in the Zoom chat here. If you also go to the OS Summit agenda document that was sent out via Eventbrite, you can also find it on the Eventbrite event listing. That agenda document should have everything, including that Miro link. So if in doubt, go to that OS Summit agenda Google Doc, and you hopefully should be able to find whatever you're looking for. If not, definitely ask here, or throughout the next few days, ask in the Matrix chat space anytime you've got questions. Okay, anybody else with questions? If we run out of questions, I will ask anybody else who wants to like introduce themselves or kind of shout out a project that you're working on.
I have a question.
I think I heard somebody. Go ahead.
Yes, I have a question. Are you guys so sort of like with the Miro board, which I think is great? That's something I'm probably going to be interested in. But are you guys open into like collaboration projects? To your point that there are a lot of like Civic Eagle tech. It's pretty much a thing, right? Everybody's trying to move civic engagement, all these different things into the tech space because this is the way we'll be operating, you know, as humanity for the rest of our lives, pretty much it seems. But are you guys open to like collaboration projects with people who are working on something similar to what you're doing? Like myself, I have an app, Powerful Voices app, that I developed that's out now, but we're in our third phase in like enhancing features, adding more opportunities for, it's more from a grassroots space for constituents to connect with each other in order to organize and advocate or lobby around certain policies and legislation. And I was just wondering if that's something that, so everybody, you know, just so for me, I can say not to reinvent the wheel, but just find people who are like-minded doing this already and seeing if we could fill in each other's gaps. Or so is that something you guys are interested in doing or have thought about?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that. I'd love if you could share, like reach out and either share your information in the Matrix chat space or post a note in the Miro board with some information about your project, because I'd love to follow up and learn more. Now sometimes we have our hands full just keeping the data moving that we make available. So I cannot promise the world in terms of what we can offer other people, but I can promise that we can have a conversation. And I want to learn about your project and what the intersection is with data that we have or data we might be able to help point you to. So yeah, we do collaborate with people already. Riley mentioned ResistBot, which is a independent organization, not funded or sponsored by us in any way. They're just a good project partner. Chris and their team over there contribute data and also use our data a bunch, right? Like that's a kind of relationship that works really well. And if there's something similar that we can set up, definitely want to have that conversation.
Okay, thank you guys.
Awesome. Anybody else with a question about the project or about the rest of the agenda today or the hackathon sessions? All right, not seeing any right now. So let me open it up. Let's see, it's 11:45 Central Time. Our next session is going to be at 12:45 Central Time, so about an hour from now. We had planned a lunch break in there, so this works well, but we do have a little bit of time. So like I said, if anybody wants to say hi, introduce yourself, who you are, either what brings you here or what project you're working on in this space, floor is open if you want to do that.
Hi, this is Spencer Snigg with VoteWise. I run a nonprofit, nonpartisan website that connects voters and politicians without advertising dollars getting in the way. I would also be very much interested in combining efforts with any other civic-minded organization or individual.
Awesome, thank you, Spencer. Same thing. Drop your info in the Miro board or in the Matrix chat, so we can make sure to follow up. And if you're not sure, if you're not comfortable just jumping in, like put your name in the chat, just say you want to introduce yourself, and we'll call on you here. Awesome. We've got a comment from Robert in the chat, and I want to say welcome, Robert. I think web scraping is a pretty good introduction to doing some Python work. There are some wrinkles when you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I get data out of a web page? That's a little bit of a specific problem to web scraping, but it's relatively approachable in that you don't really have to write a whole application. You don't have to have a server. You don't have to think about front end, back end. Writing web scraper can be a pretty fun first project. If you have a little bit of, it helps to have a little bit of knowledge about how websites work in general, like what's in there, what are the tags in there, what is CSS as a concept, like some of that stuff does help, but otherwise I think web scraping can be a pretty fun first Python project. Awesome. Anybody else who wants to introduce yourself?
I'm Akana Peck. I run the New Mexico Bill Tracker, which is another site that scrapes state legislative data. And I looked into using open states data and maybe contributing some of my scrapers. I use Flask for the website. I use Beautiful Soup mostly for scraping, so I don't know how well it would integrate with your code. But anyway, I want to find out more.
That is very cool. Kind of welcome, and thanks for sharing about your project. Yeah, very curious to hear about your code as well. We're also Python, so it's pretty easy. We mostly use the LXML module instead of Beautiful Soup, but conceptually very similar, and there's no like rule that you can't use Beautiful Soup in our code as well. Awesome, welcome. Anybody else who want to introduce yourself? All right, as we say at Civic Eagle, the stack is clear. So thank you very much. Thanks for joining this introduction session. I'm going to close things up by just, again, doing a quick overview of the rest of the agenda. And then we'll go to our lunch break. So our next session, like as I mentioned, is at 12:45 Central Time. So that's a little bit under an hour from now. We're taking a lunch break until then. That next session will be about the future open states, thinking about vision, roadmap. That will be followed by like a 15-minute break and then another session at 2:00 Central Time, and that's user highlights. That should be really good. We've got really interesting projects from the research side, from the kind of digital startup side to, just straight ahead policy advocacy with an organization that has a policy agenda. And then our last session will be at 3 p.m. Central. That's a developer Q&A. That'll be a great open space to ask any technical questions or curiosities, or even non-technical questions if you want to ask about kind of weigh in on where you think the project should go, where it might be going. That'll be kind of an open session for us to have a good discussion. Tomorrow, we start our first hackathon session. And that is going to be where we open up with both virtual and in-person experiences. So tomorrow we will physically open the doors here in Chicago at 9 a.m. Central. Virtually, we'll encourage you to start, exchanging in the matrix space on the Miro board. And we'll start our hybrid session at 10 a.m. Central tomorrow. That's going to be a welcome announcement, and that'll go right into tutorial for both tracks. So we'll have a tutorial session for the beginner/web scraping track, as well as one for the data analysis track right after that welcome session. And then most of the day is going to be time to hack and interact directly. And then we close at 5 o'clock with kind of really quick progress check-ins from everybody, a chance to share what you've built so far. And that's give you a rough picture of how the day tomorrow will work. Very similar schedule on Saturday. So think of those 2 days as roughly similar program. So very excited to have you. I will say, if you haven't already signed up for the virtual track of the hackathon sessions, that is full. I cannot offer any more tickets open to that because we have a really strong interest. If somehow nobody shows up, I'll reopen more. But the bottom line is we got really strong interest in that, and we've only got so many people to make sure we give you good help. So we do have a few more opportunities if you are here in Chicago and want to come in person. But otherwise, the virtual hackathon sessions are full for the next 2 days. Great. Thank you so much for joining. Like I said, we'll see you again here on this same video link for a little under an hour from now at 12:45 Central for that Future of Open States talk. Thanks, y'all. See you soon.